Hey, this is Super Game Ghost, and this is a list of the top 10 most expensive Super Nintendo games. Brand new sealed Super Nintendo games tend to have very volatile pricing, so I'll only be using complete inbox prices as the basis for this list. Also, this list will only include games that were available for purchase at a retailer, so no competition cartridges on this list. Number 10 on our list is Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon is a farm simulation game and is simply known as Farm Story in Japan. It was developed and published by Pack-In Video in Japan and Natsumi in North America. During Harvest Moon's development, Pack-In Video went bankrupt and merged with Victor Entertainment. The 10-man team working on Harvest Moon was cut down to only 3 people. With the reduced budget and team, it took nearly 6 months to complete Harvest Moon. Despite the Super Nintendo being at the end of its life cycle, with the Nintendo 64 already on the market, Harvest Moon still managed to sell around 100,000 units. Harvest Moon has seen several re-releases, sequels, and spin-offs on various consoles. Today, the game goes for about $985. Number 9 on our list is Wild Guns. Wild Guns is a shooting gallery video game with cooperative multiplayer. It was also developed and published by Natsumi. The game was developed by only 3 Natsumi employees who were tasked with creating a game that would be both cheap and quick to make. The team managed to complete Wild Guns within about 5 months. In Wild Guns, you choose between 2 characters, Annie or Clint, and you go through several stages shooting bandits and robots. The game's overall aesthetic looks something like a space western. The developers themselves have stated that they drew heavy inspiration from the space opera manga Cobra. The game now goes for about $1,000. Number 8 on our list is Metal Warriors. Metal Warriors is an action platformer / run and gun game. It was developed by LucasArts and published by Konami. Metal Warriors was developed by the same team at LucasArts who created Zombies Ate My Neighbors. The heavily mecha-influenced Metal Warriors was enthusiastically greenlit at LucasArts following the positive reception of Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It was also set to be a first-party title published by Nintendo with a Christmas release. However, this did not pan out, and Metal Warriors was instead published with a limited release of about 50,000 copies. Similarities with another Konami release, Cybernator, and features missing in the end product might have influenced Nintendo's decision to drop its initial deal for Metal Warriors. Metal Warriors is worth about $1.1K. At number 7 we have Captain Commando. Captain Commando was developed and published by Capcom. It is a beat-em-up style game where you choose between 4 characters. Captain Commando, a space mummy, a ninja, and an infant wearing a robot suit. The game takes place in a futuristic version of Metro City which you might recognize from Final Fight, another Capcom release. The original version of the game was released for arcade in 1991 and then ported to the SNES in 1995. The arcade version of the game allowed up to 4 players, and the SNES version supports 2 players. Captain Commando now sells for about $1,300. Number 6 spot is Pocky and Rocky 2. Pocky and Rocky 2 is a shoot 'em up game. It was developed and published by Natsumi. Our 3rd game on this list so far from Natsumi. In Japan, this game is known as, and I might butcher this, Kiki Kai Kai Tsukiyo Soishi, or Mysterious Ghost World, A Moonlit Night. Definitely a way cooler name than Pocky and Rocky 2. The game is an unconventional shoot 'em up where you have a top-down view and are able to move in 8 directions. You shoot cards at enemies and are followed by a companion who is controlled either by a second player or the CPU. The game now goes for $1,500. At number 5 we have Earthbound, a JRPG developed by Ape Incorporated and HAL Laboratories. Earthbound, known as Mother 2 in Japan, was a sequel to the original Mother which came out for the NES in 1989. Earthbound took 5 years to develop and finally released on August 27, 1994 in Japan, and about a year later in North America. It sold about 500,000 copies in Japan and about 150,000 in America. Despite a quirky $2 million marketing campaign, its sales in North America at the time were deemed a flop by Nintendo. What more can I possibly say about Earthbound that hasn't already been said? Earthbound is a legendary game and is one of the most beloved games among gamers. It has been lauded as the greatest JRPG in existence and even one of the greatest video games ever made. Earthbound goes for about $1,800. Taking the 4th spot on our list is Hagane, The Final Conflict. Hagane is a side-scrolling action platform game. It was developed by Cap Production and published by Red Entertainment and Hudson. Hagane takes place in a futuristic dystopian world where you play as a cyborg ninja. The game itself is reminiscent of Ninja Gaiden and Sega's Shinobi series. Critics at the time of its release praised Hagane's aesthetic but had little good to say about its graphics and sound design. However, today Hagane remains a cult classic of side-scrolling games. Personally, I think Hagane's biggest draw is its cool box art. Just look at that badass artwork. Hagane goes for about $1,850. At number 3 we have Final Fight Guy. Final Fight Guy is a beat-em-up game. It was developed and published by Capcom. Final Fight was first developed in 1989 as an arcade game and was first advertised as Street Fighter 89. It was even going to feature Ryu and Ken as the main protagonists. This concept was later scrapped and Final Fight became its own thing with 3 playable characters, Cody, Hager, and Guy. Final Fight drew its main influence from the arcade game Double Dragon 2, another beat-em-up game which came out a year earlier. It was later ported to the SNES in 1991 and was released as a launch title which only featured Cody and Hager as playable characters. Final Fight Guy was later released in Japan in 1992, replacing Cody with Guy as a playable character along with other additions to the game. The North American version initially saw a 1994 Blockbuster store rental only release, but later also got a limited release. Final Fight Guy goes for about $1,860. Our number 2 spot goes to Super Copa. Super Copa is a soccer simulation game. It was developed by Sculptured Software. Ever heard of Tony Meola's Sidekick Soccer? No? Neither have I. Super Copa is essentially a localized version of that game for the Latin American market. It is also known as Ramos Rui no Worldwide Soccer in Japan. In Super Copa you choose a national soccer team and go head to head against another team. The game features various soccer formations as well as the ability to make roster changes for your team. Super Copa utilizes the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 graphics mode which simulates pseudo 3D gameplay. The game now goes for about $2,100. And the number 1 spot goes to Aero Fighters. Aero Fighters is a vertically scrolling shoot-'em-up game. It was developed by Video System. Aero Fighters is known as Sonic Wings in Japan, and was released for the arcade in 1992, and then later ported to the SNES in 1993. It features single-player and 2-player co-op with a cast of 4 playable characters, and 8 characters in 2-player mode. Each character represents a jet fighter from one of either the United States, Japan, Sweden, or the UK. Aero Fighters features 7 stages which are divided into 2 parts. Once the last stage has been beaten, the game starts all over with much more difficult versions of the same 7 stages. This game goes for a whopping $3,200. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe.